Good morning, actually, good afternoon, everyone. And it's a good morning to my guests. I want to just clarify that. Welcome to Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice, and I will be your host today. And I do want to let our viewers and listeners know that before I introduce my guests and we start chatting, I just want to give everyone a heads up, a warning that topics that we are going to discuss are not suitable for young children. And these topics can be triggering and very detailed. So I just want to put that out there. And obviously in the show notes, I will make sure that is there as well. Now that we've gotten through that, I am so excited to introduce my amazing guest. Her name is Karen Hewitt. And let me tell you something. She's flipping amazing. I'll get to the other F words in just a moment. She is an unfuckable, badass bitch, owner, CEO with her business blossomtosuccess.com. And like me, she's an introvert, obviously a business coach, Life and NLP Coach, podcast host of her own podcast, Introverts Toolbox. And she's also a survivor. So I want to welcome Karen to the Stories podcast family. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much, Janice. This is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. So as I said in our little warning, the topics that we may discuss can be very triggering and detailed with some people. And I want you, if you don't mind, you are a survivor. By all accounts, when we put ourselves in that survivor category, I'm a survivor, we sometimes stay stuck in there, and our thoughts, our feelings, and how we go forward in our lives gets totally effed up. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your story.
Not at all. So I say, when you get in a relationship, you think it's going to be that fairy tale. Everyone tells you about the knight that sweeps the princess off the feet. Everything is perfect. Everything is amazing. You watch Hallmark movies. It's all like, oh my goodness, fairy tales, perfect, perfect, perfect. I think there was a lot of preempting up to my story, and I can go into that a little bit later because we don't just fall into these. I had the fairy tale. Someone swept me off my feet, flowers, hold my chair, open the door, wouldn't let me carry bags. I mean, complete Southern gentleman, to the point where everyone was like, how did you bag that man? Oh my gosh, how amazing is he? And everyone would tell me how lucky I was. I mean, doesn't that sound perfect?
It sounds very perfect. It sounds like the typical Cinderella story.
And it was. I thought it was amazing. And then I moved from England to the United States. We got married. And I got a job, did all the paperwork, all that kind of good stuff. And I started working. And at first he would take me to work because I still had to get my driver's license because I had my English one, but I didn't have my American one. And then once I passed my driver's test and started taking myself to work, started to see a little bit more control come in. And when I tell you that the light switch flipped over less than 5 minutes, I got home late from work 5 minutes later than normal. And I walked in and was slapped hard across the face because I was late. And he said it was because he was worried. He was panicking. He thought I'd been in a car accident. Something had gone wrong. Every reason why he was worried. And it was just pent up frustration and anxiety and worry and forgive me, forgive. And okay, we've heard this story before. They hit you once and it's, please forgive me. I'll do anything. It'll never happen again. And that's what I got. And again, it went right back to the perfect life. What I didn't realize at the time was over the previous several months, he had been conditioning me. I was working full time. He was not working at all. I was taking care of all the cooking, cleaning, groceries, laundry, every single thing, and catering to his every whim and need. Even to the point of, oh my goodness, you look beautiful in that dress. And I'd wear something else different a week later. Oh, you look so pretty in that dress last week. Why don't you put that back on? So by the time we got to that, I was wearing exactly what he wanted. I had my hair how he wanted. I was wearing my makeup how he wanted. I was cooking the meals he wanted on which day he wanted. Everything was controlled. Now, okay, hold on one second. Please come play over there. Sorry. My youngest decided to come stand next to me.
Mhm.
And people always say, why didn't you leave after the, first time he hits me, I'm leaving. I won't stay. I don't want.
Folks, she's just on mute for just a moment.
Sorry, I was asking my son
Okay.
to go play. It was like, you think that he, one hit, you leave. That's what they say. They hit me one time, I'm gone, I'm done. It's never happening again. But they don't realize how much control they get over you in the first 6 months or the first year or the first 5 years before they even put a finger on you. And they beg for forgiveness and they tell you it will never, ever happen again. You want to think they wouldn't happen again. A couple of weeks later, it happened again. This time I got the story about how he grew up with abuse, how he didn't want to repeat the cycle, how he saw his dad do it to his mom. He wanted to get help. He needed help and he needed me to help him. And this is another common story with anyone who's been through domestic violence. They turn it on the person that we need you to help us. You're going to fix us. I want to get fixed, so fix me. And again, I forgave him, thinking, oh, this will never happen again. By the end of the relationship, and we can go into more details on things that happened once, the reason I left is I realized I would die if I stayed, and I'd probably die if I left. But at least leaving, I had a chance to survive. Because after this point, he had resorted to, he'd used a knife to my throat. He had choked me unconscious. He had beat my head into a concrete floor till I blacked out and he thought he'd killed me. And he was sat there having a beer while I was lay there, completely unconscious. He had pushed my face into a boiling sink of water and held me till I passed out. He had held pillows over my face. He had kicked me repeatedly. And they say that when we went through all the details that he probably tried to kill me at least 4 times. And how I'd even survived, it was beyond some people. Just absolutely beyond them.
Wow. But you survived is what you said there. And I also want to go back because I think this is really important to point out. You mentioned something that you had a choice. I would die if I stayed. I would die if I left. But at least if I left, I would have a chance.
Yeah, because they actually I found this out later afterwards, but statistically, most of the homicides relating to domestic violence happen when the partner tries to leave. Because at that point, they don't think they have anything left. So statistically speaking, the day I tried to leave, or the day I actually left, was the most likely for me to be killed by him, even though he had attempted on several occasions before.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why a lot of women, or even men who are in domestic, they don't leave because it's, at least I'm alive. And the other part of it is they mess with your head. They really mess with your head. And you start to believe that you deserve each hit. I burnt the dinner, I needed to be punished. I was late, I needed to be punished. I had a text message or conversation with someone. I understand why he's upset. You know, they tell you every reason that they hit you, kick you, or whatever is something that you did to make that happen. It's never their fault, is what they tell you. They always shift the blame onto the victim. If you hadn't burnt dinner, I wouldn't have thrown the plate at you. If you weren't flirting with this person, I wouldn't have a reason to be jealous. You know, if you'd just taken care of this, I wouldn't have been upset. So we start getting on this eggshell basis where we're constantly walking on eggshells. And you can see it. If you're looking at someone and you think something's off and you notice that they're jumping in eggshells and trying to accomplish every tiny little thing, the chances are they're in some form of abusive relationship, because it's easier to make sure that the partner is completely satisfied and happy than to risk the pain that could come later.
Oh my goodness. So that endless cycle was endless until you made the decision that day. Now, what did that look like for you? I mean, did you, if you don't mind me asking, did you plan that, or it was you woke up this one particular day and you said, that's it, I'm out of here?
Not, it was slightly planned, but not by me. What happened was I went to work and I got out of the car and I said, I don't even remember what I said, but apparently something I said upset him. So he hit me in the parking lot. And normally it'd all been very private. He'd always done it behind closed doors. And the assistant manager where I was working saw it.
Oh my goodness.
And he had friends who were with the sheriff's department. So he sat me down when I came into work and talked to me, found out what was going on, told me he'd been suspecting it for a long time. But what he had been doing is the whole time he'd been suspecting it, he'd been like telling me, okay, I'm here if you need me. You know, you want a friend to, he never was like, oh, you need to leave or anything like that. He was never in your face about it. He was just like, I'm always here, you know, you can talk to me. It's good. And that night he brought his boyfriend over, who was someone with the sheriff's department. And they took out one of the tail lights on the car. And when he went to go get something from the store, had him pulled over because of the tail light being out. So they kind of almost orchestrated a setup, but they figured it would just give me 30, 40 extra minutes to pack some stuff and get out. Turned out he had bench warrants. So he got hauled into jail for having warrants, which was going to give me 3 or 4 more days. So instead of the rapid, let's pack stuff up and leave, they were like, okay, so they started to spend the night at where I was at the house. They would come over, be on the couch fully armed because they were worried in case he got let out, and was trying to get it all set up so I could have a restraining order, an order of protection, start getting lawyers, things like that. And the Monday, that was a Saturday night, and there was no way he was going to get out till Monday or Tuesday because, you know, weekends, judges aren't there to release people. I went to work and I actually almost went down to bail him out and beg for forgiveness, because in my head, I was, if he gets out and then realizes I had anything to do with this, I'm done. Can I get ahead of this? Can I make it so it won't be so bad? And I ended up, I was not in a very good emotional state. And of course, I was in retail. So every time I was like, no, it's allergies. It's just allergies, as I'm crying, you know, it's nothing. I'm just seasonal allergies. Someone saw through it and had me go and sit down for a cup of coffee. And he had immigrated from Japan. He was an older gentleman. He was probably 80 plus years old. And for some reason, I just bawled everything out, blabbed it out, complete emotional mess, and told him how broken I was. And that maybe, just maybe, I can get him to forgive me. So, but that is when the actual life-changing moment happened. Because he told me I was not broken. he told me that I was Sakura, and that's cherry blossoms. And he explained that every winter the cherry blossom trees die. Their bark gets gray, they lose all the flowers, all the leaves, and they look like they'll never come back. They look sad and lonely and broken. But what they're really doing is digging their roots in deep to get all the water and nutrients they need, so in the spring they can come back twice as beautiful as before. And he said, this is a winter for you. This is not your spring. And this is why I have cherry blossoms everywhere to remind me, when you're in a hard time, when things are not good, when things are a struggle, when there's that challenge, it's just your winter. Dig your roots in, get the nutrition and the personal development, the meditation, the journaling, the shadow work that you need, and then your spring will come.
Wow. And your spring came.
Yeah.
What did that feel like to you? Let me ask that a different way. So you obviously left that situation, and your spring came in such a way that maybe you didn't anticipate. What did that feel like for you?
My spring was a long, long journey away, because we had a very difficult divorce. Thankfully, I didn't have children or anything like that to contest, although he did fight me over the dog. And the dog had stitches because of him, because the dog had got between me and him and ended up with stitches, and we had all those vet records. We had all the medical records. He tried to get all my 401ks, alimony, everything would have left me completely broken with nothing. And thankfully it was seen through, like, no, there wouldn't be a divorce pending if you hadn't been doing all this. And he actually threatened me in one of the courtrooms that he was going to smash my face into a million pieces in front of all the different court staff, which again led to him having a nice little timeout, I think is a good way to put it. How they ended up getting the divorce is they basically had me sign it and then took it to him where he was being kept and had him sign it. It did leave me with PTSD, because he'd also told me that if he ever saw me again, I wouldn't survive. So every time I left the house, I was looking, is he there? Is he around the corner? Because he'd also do things once he got out. The restraining order was he had to stay a certain amount of feet away from me. So he literally went to where I worked, measured that distance, and then took one step back and stood there. So he was not breaking the restraining order, which meant I had to quit work. I couldn't work. I actually ended up going out on disability for a while I went to therapy and everything like that, because they really messed with me. I ended up with agoraphobia. I would literally not leave my house for months and months on end, because you never know when I might see him. We moved house in the middle of the night, all these different things to avoid it. And honestly, I think I started to make small breakthroughs, after I got remarried. And then 5 years ago, my mom passed away suddenly. And the one thing she told me, other than the fact that she wanted to kill him, because she really wanted to go and find him and teach him a lesson, because she was not happy about what happened to me, she wanted me to look at it as, I survived this because somebody else may not have. If it had been someone else in my shoes that time, they may not have survived. So yes, I went through all this, but I probably saved someone's life, because he would have done this no matter who. And there was another aspect that just made me so angry all the time. And I don't know if any other survivors feel this way, but there's this one question that everyone asks. And at first it made me feel so bad. It made me feel like total shit. I'm like, oh, the hell, what the fuck did I do? And then it started making me angry. And that was well, why didn't you leave? Well, I would have left the first time they put their hands on me. Oh, I wouldn't have put up with that. And what that is actually doing is you're putting the blame back on the victim. Like they asked for it. They wanted it. That's why they stayed. I'm telling you right now, no one wants it. No one wants to be beat on a daily basis. No one wants to be worried about when they get home, how long am I going to be conscious for today? What bruises am I going to have to hide tomorrow? No one wants that. And when you ask them, well, why didn't you just leave? You know what? They probably didn't leave because they were more scared of leaving than staying, because if they left, they would probably ended up dead.
And that was your normal for quite a long time, to be in that state of flipping fear of, like when you said, am I going to come home today and am I going to be knocked unconscious, or what is going to happen? But you left, and I have to agree with your mother. And that in a way for me to say is very hard. But I think as I'm feeling, as I was listening, I was feeling it. And I almost pictured your mom saying that to you. That's pretty profound.
Yeah. And she told me that I had to learn to tell my story. Because she says, if you can tell your story to the right person, you could stop someone else from getting hurt. And that's when I decided to make a change. I had to start learning how to get past some of my anxiety, my PTSD, my agoraphobia. I started working on my business. My business was born, again, the blossom, because it was all about not changing who you are, but let yourself be the real you, the authentic you, and grow yourself. When I started to learn how to speak in public, when I started to learn how to be on stages, because when my mom left, it was like my biggest cheerleader left, and it was like, no, I have to do what she wanted. That was how I was going to hold her legacy.
And you have, and now that I hear the name of your business, I hear you saying it, I hear you speaking it, I can see it on your backdrop. I can see the other backdrop. It makes so much sense now. And you have succeeded in such a way, you've honored your journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have been featured in magazines for my coaching business. I have been on many podcasts, just like on yours. Not only that, but I got elected this year alone to run an entire statewide nonprofit for public speaking and communication. So I'm like the district director of an Arizona-led state nonprofit organization, which is all about public speaking. It's all about permission and leadership. And I get to stand up and help other people tell their story. And that's
I'm speechless, but in a good way. Out of the ashes comes a light where you were able to blossom to success. When did the name of the business hit you? Like when you're starting your business, you're starting these speaking engagements, been on podcasts, you have your own successful podcast. When did that come to you? You're like, that's it.
Oh my gosh. So I actually started in the network marketing sphere because I needed a way to bring in money. So I started that, and that started to teach me social media, started to teach me marketing, started to teach me storytelling, all those good little things. And I then started to teach other network marketers some of the things that I had done. And honestly, I've gone through several name incarnations. At one point, I was the geek of network marketing because I like my Marvel, I like my comic books, I like my action, I like all the geeky stuff. And then it was, well, it's your time to blossom. And it was like, well, okay, I'm not feeling that. But I realized I was onto something. I was like, no. And as I looked around, I have cherry blossoms everywhere in my house. I have pictures of them. I even have fairy lights that are little cherry blossom lights. I have a rose quartz crystal cherry blossom tree. It's like cherry blossoms are everywhere for me, everywhere. And as it came on, I started with It's Time to Blossom. And that's when I realized a lot of my problems were mental. And by mental, I mean like psychologically, I'd put myself down because I'd been put down so much. I would say very negative things to myself. Well, yeah, no wonder you failed. Look at you. Oh my God, look, just lose some weight, will you? Like, oh, you're so fat. Yeah, you are stupid. And I'd be saying this stuff to myself. And that's when I discovered Neuro Linguistics, which is about that brain programming, that language program that you speak. It's that internal conversation. So I started to study it. I became a practitioner, and then I got certified as a coach because I was seeing all the benefits that it was offering me, and I understood how it could offer other people those benefits. And because 90% of what your issues are, 90% of what your blocks are, 90% of what your hurdles are ones that you're putting in on yourself. And this is something I want the listeners to realize. If you have ever, and I'm going to encourage you, just think about it. If you've ever said anything negative to yourself, and I can guarantee every single one of us has had a negative conversation with ourselves, you're not actually the voice behind that. You think you are because you're hearing it in your own voice in your head. But every single one of those conversations has a root. And that root is somebody else saying it to you. And you've heard it so often that you are repeating it in yourself. And you've started to take ownership of it. And that is where a lot of us struggle, because we've taken ownership of what someone else has told us.
And taking ownership of something gives us a reality, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. And it's so much easier for our brains to take ownership of the bad stuff. Think of like a kid. If you tell a kid they're bad at math one time, how often will they tell you they're bad at math?
Mm-hmm.
And then they will struggle. And then they may end up being bad at math because they've told themselves the story, I'm bad at math.
Wow. So blossomtosuccess.com.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn the NLP, you're a practitioner. And then obviously I think that the next progression was, did life coaching come like right after that?
Yeah, that's when I realized how much the NLP was helping me, that I could help other people. So that's when I became certified as the coach. Because it was one thing for me to understand it. It was another thing for me to help other people understand it.
And that's a gift from the heart and the soul, from one's pain to one's others' ownership in reality, that they do have their ownership, that they can change it around. They can change their life around.
And it just begins with little conversations. And I'm not talking the toxic positivity that everyone's like, do that. Tell yourself you can do this. You've got this. We do that too much. We start to really just like, oh yeah, and I'm lying to myself. Tell yourself, well, I may not have it yet, but I'm going to learn. Or I'm going to grow. And give yourself a plan rather than just the automatic, yeah, I got this. Yeah, I can get over that. And it's the same thing with trauma. For some reason, we're expected that as soon as we leave it, well, you're left, you're okay now. I still, to this day, and it's been 15 years, have responses to anger, to yelling. I shut down. I can't sit in a restaurant with my back to the room. I have to have my back to a wall so I can see it. I have to see the exits, things like that. I'm 15 years later and I'm still doing that. And that's normal.
Right. And I was just going to say that's normal, because our new normal takes on a different meaning. It takes on a different shape. And it's just, it's a grieving process. I know for me, I'm not a survivor of domestic abuse. I am a survivor of a sexual assault. And those things do pop up every now and then. I will never say that I am over it. It's always there. I've, through the counseling and the therapists that I was working with, that in so many ways was the blessing, the push that I needed to move forward with my life.
And a lot of people who have been through this, like yourself, you probably heard people tell you, well, that happens X amount of time ago. You should be fine now. Or they'll go, oh, well, someone yelled at me once. I'm okay now. You have to remember every individual's journey is exactly that individual's journey. And you have to have your own time for healing. And if you recognize that you're in your own healing time, well, then you're doing better than most people. And I think that is the key thing that I want anyone who goes through anything to take away is you're going to have your own healing time, and nobody can tell you how long or how intense or how it's going to happen, because that's only going to happen how it needs to happen for you in that time frame. And don't let anyone else dictate that.
That is absolutely true, 1000%, and then some. Now, you're in your business and you're coaching your clients. What would be one thing that stands out to you? Like perhaps one of your clients said, well, I was feeling this way about a certain incident, but now I feel this way. I feel fantastic. And I've moved on. It's still there, but I've moved on. That must be, as you as their life coach, must be just amazing.
I actually don't encourage the move on. Reason being is a lot of the time when people say they've moved on, they're trying to forget it. So what I encourage is for people to incorporate it. It happened. We can't take it away. And it sucked, and it was terrible, and it was fucked up, and someone did something horrible to you, or something horrible happened in your life. You don't really move on. What you do is you adapt to a new level. And how that is more about how are you processing it? What are your reactions to it? Because when it first happens, your reactions are raw. For me, it was leaving the house and ending up in a panic attack less than 6 inches out of my front door and crawling back into my front door, slamming the door and sitting there for an hour, being unable to breathe properly. That was my initial response. And if I would say, oh, I've moved on from that, it's almost like saying I didn't go through it. So what I teach is you adapt it, and it gives you some new understanding. So you may not have moved on, but what did you understand from the situation? What did you understand from what your strengths are, what your abilities are now? What did it teach you about you? And I'm not talking about well, it taught me what they said. It taught me the words that they put in my head. No, that's not what it taught you. It's what they said. It's what they tried to get through to you. What did you learn? How did you adapt? And then how can you use that going forward? So a lot of times I have people and they'll tell me something that happened. And once we go into the adaptation phase, they'll say things, well, it taught me that I'm really aware of my surroundings. And this is, when we're in trauma, we go to an extreme level of that because that's normal. So the idea is, can we adapt so we can utilize that new skill set to be something that's beneficial in your life? I'm observant, so what I can see is I can see things that are happening at work that allows me to put more things into practice. That means now I'm more valuable to my senior management. Okay, you develop that skill from that hyper awareness. how can we make that a new adaptation of something that is beneficial to you rather than harmful?
Mm-hmm.
So we turn these things that are painful, we turn these things that are stressful, we turn these things that hurt us, and we turn them into benefits. And I realize in a way that sounds crazy, like, yeah, let's turn your trauma into a happy. It's not turning it into a happy thing. It happened. You have the right to grieve it. You have the right to be upset. You have the right to be hurt by it. But we're letting them win. Is all we have from it is pain. So we need to take some of that success away from them by saying, I overcame.
And you overcame in a badass bitch way, I might add.
Absolutely.
Karen, do you see yourself, and maybe you told me about this, but I don't recall. Do you see yourself on a TEDx stage?
Yes. That is one of my goals, is I want to go. And I already know the one thing I want to discuss is that positive control that I was telling you about earlier. Because that is how it starts. It's this positive control. They tell you things to change who you are, but they tell you, I mean, okay, Janice, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that purple shirt. That purple shirt is so pretty on you. You feel good, right? It's like, okay, I like that. But let's say next time I saw you wearing a blue shirt. Well, a blue shirt looks good, but purple is so your color. That purple shirt looks so amazing on you last week. What goes in your head?
Damn, don't I still look good? Like, what?
Yeah, I know. Well, a lot of people, what happens is they go, maybe purple's my color. Maybe I should wear more purple.
So I see what you're saying, and now I have a better understanding. You're talking about that positive control. Purple looks great on me. Now I wear blue, and that looks okay, but you really should. So that gets the thinking in your mind, well, I need to wear purple.
Yeah, because they said I look really good in purple, because it gives you that little rush. And then they start doing it on other things. So now they're turning you into exactly who they want. And they are getting complete control over you. And they have not once raised their hand, raised their voice, or touched you. But they're in complete control of you.
And that is the understanding part of what you went through. Obviously, very hard to see when you're going through it to a certain degree. But as you see that going forward, the number of people that you have helped, the number of people who hear your podcast, the number of people who will not only view and listen to this podcast is enormous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's when you start to think, am I doing this because someone else told me to? Or am I doing this because I want to?
Right.
And that's when you can start taking control of yourself.
That is amazing. And I also see you writing a book, and I think we've chatted about that before.
Yes. Yeah, it's currently with an editor to go through it. It's very raw. It's a very detailed journal of what I went through. So, and it, like I said, it's very raw. I mean, I didn't go into all the details because I never know who's listening.
Right.
Stuff was so horrific that when I describe what happened, people are like, and you stayed after that happened? It was like, yeah, because he had control. And so it's a very detailed journalistic accounting of what I went through. Wow. And it's written very raw on purpose to be painful to read, because I want people to understand that when you turn around and just question why someone stayed in it, why someone didn't get help, why someone didn't reach out, it's not because they didn't want to, it's because they felt that they couldn't. And until you, and I don't want people to, I really don't want people to experience it to understand it. But if you haven't experienced it, you don't understand it.
And that is so true. We never know to the extent the emotional trauma that one undergoes when they go through a very horrific event. Now it's 15 years later, about 15 years later. What would be one thing that you maybe had wished, or when you look back at your journey and said, oh, well, I was there and now I'm here. What is the one thing, and you've shared some great insight today that are going to help, like I said, so many people, but what is the one thing that you hold true to yourself that you know will help others contemplating just that same exact type of decision that they need, that they want to make in their lives? What can you add to what you've already so graciously shared?
So one thing I do want to say is people won't leave because you tell them to. If you know someone in a situation where you suspect they're going through domestic violence, or you know for a fact they are, you can sit there and tell them to leave till you're blue in the face and they still won't. Because it has to be their choice. They're the ones that are assessing the risk. They're the ones that are figuring out whether it's safe or not for them to do so. So this is for the people who are on the outside looking in. Do what my assistant manager did. He didn't tell me to leave. He kept telling me he was there. He was ready if I needed to talk. If I wanted any support from anyone, he could listen. And he reassured me it was a judgment-free zone. So offering that true friendship to someone who's going in it is going to be more beneficial than sitting there going, oh no, you can do better. And you see that trope in movies all the time. Oh girl, leave him. You can do so much. You see that all the time. That doesn't work because we don't think we can do better at that time. So honestly, offer support and love and friendship. And if you're in the situation, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to leave because I'm a stranger and I don't know what's in your head. But I will tell you that you are a beautiful individual that is worthy of so much love and so much support. And there are people out there willing to offer you that love and support if you let them in and just talk to them. Gain that support network, because that support network is what's going to give you the strength to be able to do the steps that you know you need to do. I'm not in a place to tell you, but you are worthy of that love. You are worthy of that support. You are worthy of that friendship. You are an amazing individual. And people do see that. There are people around you that you don't even realize look at you and go, wow, they're amazing. Oh my gosh, I would love to be their friend. They are so fun. They are so cool. They are so interesting. I guarantee there's someone in your life that is thinking that right now. So let people in and accept that friendship, accept that support, because that is your first step to reclaiming what you truly want in life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your soul. Thank you for sharing your story, which really is a blossom to success. And that's what Stories That Inspire Us is all about. And I am inspired by your courage and your strength and your kind words. And know that your blossom to success will also be shared with somebody else's blossom. Thank you so much, Karen, for being here today and sharing your story.
Thank you, Janice. It's just been a pleasure. I'm so happy I was able to share with you.
Thank you so much. Oh, one other question. How can, and I will make sure this gets in the show notes, how can everyone get a hold of you?
So I'm pretty much on most social medias as Blossom to Success. I'll go to blossomsuccess.com. right there, and you can reach out to me. I do spend most of my time on like Facebook and Instagram, so that's always a good place. But the website has every link right there on it.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You know, everyone, if you're going through something as difficult as Karen has and continues to, know that your blossom to success is right around the corner. Len, and if you're someone who knows of somebody going through that, as Karen had mentioned, be that friend for them. Listen to them. Don't just hear them. Listen and be their support and their guide. My name is Janice, your host today for Stories That Inspire Us. Sorry, I'm getting a little choked up here. I was inspired today by this amazing soul. It is the reason why Stories That Inspire Us is here today and will continue to be here. My name is Janice. Thank you again, and we hope to see you again very soon. Thanks again, Karen.
Thank you. Like I said, been a pleasure.